Hey, how's it going? It's Keith Townsend from the CTOadvisor.com. You're watching a special sponsored CTO dose with HPE. I have Waylon
Jiang, yep.
GM VP of Hybrid Cloud Business at HPE. Waylon, thanks for joining the program.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
So, HPE has been working on this hybrid cloud vision for the past few years. Like, you guys pre-announced some stuff back at, I think it was HPE Discover 2016, where you said, you know what, this is a reach, the name has changed, but the idea was this is a really big problem in the enterprise. There's cloud sprawl, and we're trying to get that under control via the IT infrastructure team.
Yeah.
Tell us, what's the result of all of that research? What's the offering, the hybrid cloud offering from HPE?
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. What we see in a lot of our customers is that the lines of businesses, the developers, they want all of the nice things that they get from the cloud. They want to work with APIs. They want to work with the cloud services. But the IT organization needs to put a certain amount of governance and control over that access. And that tension between kind of the traditional IT processes and the ITIL world and the DevOps world, there's a chasm in between those two worlds. And that's where our solutions, particularly our OneSphere solution, is trying to bridge those worlds together.
So that's a pretty tough chasm to cross.
Absolutely.
The two completely different cultures.
Yeah.
We were talking to the storage unit a couple of days ago.
Yep.
And one of the things that I challenged them on was, you know what, it's great if Nimble Analytics can help me determine if I have storage waste. But I can give that report to developers, and they just simply don't care.
Sure, yeah.
So talk to me about how hybrid cloud helps with some of that, from a technology perspective and culturally, how it helps bridge that chasm between the developer, what developers care about, which is solving business problems, and the infrastructure team, which is enabling developers to basically not shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah. That's a great question. Developers, what they want is they want to have unfettered access to their APIs.
Right.
That's fundamentally. They want elastic infrastructure. They want self-service access. The IT organization at the same time wants to give them that access. They want to ensure that they have speed and agility because the business problems they're trying to solve require that. It's no longer the big beating the small, it's the fast beating the slow. But what has to happen is the IT organization needs to be able to give them that self-service access, but embed governance into that. So I'll give you a good example. The OneSphere product has a concept called projects around it. And projects has membership, it has quotas, it has policy embedded in it. But through that project construct, the self-service consumers of those resources can use the native APIs. They can consume the cloud just like they're used to consuming, but they don't have all unfettered access to that infrastructure. So one example, you might have an IT policy that says, I use AWS, but I'm not allowed to use X1 instances, which is the large memory instance, which is a really expensive instance. And the IT organization may say, from a cost perspective, you as a project team should never use an X1 instance. You may have another policy that says you should never have an S3 bucket that's unencrypted. Just as an IT policy, you never want to have that happen because that's a security threat. I mean, if you think about cloud, from the consumer's perspective, what OneSphere calls a persona, which is essentially a role in the product, they just want to see the cloud. They want to see the APIs, they want to see all the services. But the IT organization wants to make sure that presentation of those cloud resources have guardrails. They have safety. So they have compliance built in. They have cost transparency. They have IT policies embedded within it that are automated and always happening so that they're not getting in the way of the developers. So the developers still see everything that they enjoy from the cloud. But the IT organization has a certain amount of governance and control over those resources.
So I call this an opinionated, unopinionated view of cloud. That you want to remove you don't want to be a broker.
No.
You don't want to put your own APIs on top of.
The middle.
Right. You want to get out of the way of the developer.
Yeah.
So that's very different than some of the other industry players. Some of the other industry players take their existing operating model and move that to the cloud.
Yep.
What are you hearing from developers specifically about that approach versus their approach HPE is taking?
Yeah, from a developer's perspective, and I think this is kind of a key difference to what we've seen in the past, is that it's all about APIs.
Right.
And every API is an opportunity to automate. In the past, you had a lot of traditional IT processes that is paper, it's documented workflows, but you can't automate any of that. You need to have APIs to automate that. And the cloud did a great job of providing APIs for infrastructure as a service, and that revolutionized how people develop applications. But what nobody's really stepped into the void of providing APIs for infrastructure, physical infrastructure.
Right.
And so what we at HPE, we're trying to build everything around APIs. So nimble storage arrays. We have our Synergy Composer that's built around APIs. OneSphere is entirely around built around APIs. So we have a portal, developer.hpe.com, where we're aggregating communities of developers, not just our own internal developers, where we're building content and we're providing that content to our customers, but we're also using it as a destination for other customers, other people who are innovating that want to use our APIs, build content, and have that be distributed out to other consumers that find value in that. We're trying to build that community and build that destination.
So we've learned that community is now the new API standards body. Basically, the community didn't wait on the standard body to figure out containers. They got together, built solutions that solve problems, and then just put it out there, and the kind of the best solution won. Sounds like a similar approach.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, all of the code that we're putting on the developer portal is all open source. We are realistic about building all of the content that has value in the IT enterprise organizations. So we're trying to leverage the community through our APIs and our platforms. And I think that there's not a lot of companies that are really investing as heavily as we are into developers and into APIs.
So as we look at that input that developers give, and then the output into infrastructure professionals, developers want to consume cloud a certain way, like AWS, Azure, Google Compute, get how developers work.
Yep.
Infrastructure folks, there's still kind of a disconnect.
Yep.
How is that output helping to drive decisions on how you build products?
Yeah, well, a lot of IT organizations are asking their IT professionals to become developers.
Mm-hmm.
So don't think about developers as just people building apps. Developers are traditional IT professionals that are automating the tasks that they have that are routine, that are daily, and it allows them to optimize and make more efficient what they have to do on a daily basis. And that code that they're developing is just like any other code that developers develop. And that's where we can come in as HPE, is help those IT organizations on that journey of starting with kind of traditional ITOM and moving to a real DevOps culture.
So infrastructure as code, the ability to say, programmatically, I can define my infrastructure, I can define the operating parameters of my infrastructure, and in theory, I can take what I've defined for my private data center and private cloud, mm-hmm. I can apply those policies to any other cloud because it's just high-level abstractions that I've developed, and now I can make my infrastructure a portable infrastructure.
Yeah, and it's replicatable. So if you've got enterprise edge, remote office, you have a new data center you want to spin up, you build artifacts that allow you to recreate in an automated way that infrastructure. Look at our Synergy product, for mm-hmm. example. Synergy has kind of pioneered the whole area of composability. And think about composability as essentially an API for the rack. For the generations of infrastructure, before Synergy, it was just hardware that you plug into a wall and you plug in networks and you log into a box and you do a bunch of handcrafting.
Right.
But what Synergy allows you to do is it allows you to compose networking, storage, everything around configuration of the server, all through APIs. So it's truly an API for your infrastructure.
So I think let's go back to the HPE communities piece.
Yep.
It sounds like we have sub-communities. We have kind of traditional developers in the traditional sense. I want to write a business line application. I want to use APIs and OneSphere because Chris Purcell will get me if I call it Spear.
Well, that we should have looked at that one as one of the alternate product names.
Yes, there you go. Consume that the way that I consume any other traditional cloud. And then we have this community of infrastructure coders. Is that set up? Is that set up in HPE communities for those types of conversations? Because those are two completely different communities.
Different worlds, they have similar cross-cutting concerns. So within OneSphere, what we can help is we can help automate and simplify the provisioning of your infrastructure. And that can be traditional IaaS, that can be containers as a service. So we can, through our service catalog, be able to deploy a Kubernetes cluster, be able to set up your tiller server so that you can vend Helm charts into your clusters. And what developers care about is that simplicity of being able to set up those clusters allows them to focus on the application they're trying to develop, rather than wrestling with the infrastructure and setting up a Kubernetes cluster and setting up federation between their private cloud and public cloud, getting their Helm charts into a place where they can have curated content. So the developers, the whole goal is to allow them to build code and have speed and agility. So anything you can do to help simplify what they have to do to wrestle with getting to the point where they're just writing code, that's really the goal of OneSphere and all of the products we're building at HPE.
So Wayne, I'm going to give you the last word. As people look out at the industry, everyone has a vision for cloud. No one company can do it alone. HPE, I love to say this, is that HPE, even the smaller version of HPE, still has the ear of the CIO.
Yep.
When you're having the conversation, when you get that conversation with the CIO, the Fortune 500 CIO, and you're making an argument for HPE's cloud vision, what's the elevator pitch?
I think where we really see our differentiation and value is around choice. We support all of the major vendors of public cloud: AWS, Azure, GCP. We have our Cloud 28 partners, Cloud 28 Plus partners. We support any number of IaaS platforms from VMware ESX to Hyper-V to KVM, Linux KVM based hypervisors. So it's all around choice. Antonio talks about meeting the customers where they are and helping them go to where, helping them on their journey of where do they want to go. And that's really our mantra. It's about trying to help customers with the problems that they have and to give them the flexibility to deploy what's best for them.
And if people want to find out more about HPE Cloud, hybrid cloud, what should they go?
Well, the first place to go is developer.hpe.com because you're going to find a rich set of APIs and a developer community that you can connect with. And that's probably the first place to really start.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing the vision of HPE's hybrid cloud. Hope much success. We need a really competitive, successful HPE.
I enjoyed it, Keith.
Thank you. That's it for this episode of the CTO Dose. We appreciate HPE for sponsoring the CTO Dose. Talk to you next CTO Dose.